I stood backstage at the National Youth Excellence Awards, my hand trembling as I held the envelope I'd deliberately left on my parents' kitchen counter 3 days ago. The invitation to their daughter's award ceremony, the daughter they'd forgotten existed. Through the gap in the curtain, I could see the auditorium filling with proud families, flashing cameras, tears of joy. My seat in the audience, the two I'd reserved for guardians, sat empty. Perfect, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Where are you? Your sister needs help with her college essays. I smiled, deleted it, and turned off my phone. They had no idea I was here. They had no idea their disappointing daughter was about to receive the highest honor given to any high school student in the country, a full scholarship to MIT, recognition from the president, and a feature in Time magazine's 30 Under 18 to Watch. They didn't know because I hadn't told them, because in my last life, I had told them, had begged them to come, and they'd chosen my sister's mediocre piano recital instead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began. To the moment I died at 17 and woke up at 14 with a second chance and a burning memory of every betrayal that was yet to come. The first time I lived through my 17th year, it ended on a hospital bed with my parents arguing over whether to donate my organs while I could still hear them. I'd collapsed during my final exams, and by the time they rushed me to the hospital, it was too late. The brain tumor they'd ignored for months, dismissed as me being dramatic and attention-seeking when I complained of headaches, had grown too large. I died listening to my mother say, "At least Melissa still has her whole life ahead of her." Then I woke up gasping in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the faded curtains, my worn-out blanket scratchy against my skin. The calendar on my wall read March 15th, 3 years earlier. I was 14 again, in the spring of my freshman year. The memories crashed into me like a tidal wave. Every dismissal, every forgotten birthday, every time they'd chosen my younger sister Melissa over me, every award ceremony they'd missed because it coincided with one of Melissa's activities. The way they'd emptied my college fund to pay for Melissa's private piano lessons with a renowned instructor who turned out to be a fraud. The way I'd worked 3 part-time jobs to pay for my AP exam fees while they bought Melissa a car for her 16th birthday. The way I'd gotten into MIT on a full scholarship and they'd been annoyed I'd be abandoning the family when Melissa needed help with her homework. But worst of all, was the memory of the National Youth Excellence Awards. In my previous life, I'd won. I'd achieved something remarkable. I'd designed an AI algorithm that could predict natural disasters with 87% accuracy. I'd submitted it to competitions, won regional and state levels, and advanced to nationals. When the invitation came for the ceremony in Washington, D.C., I'd been so proud, so hopeful. Surely this would make them see me. Surely this would make them proud. I'd shown them the invitation 6 weeks in advance. My mother had glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey. Mark it on the calendar." I'd been so naive. I'd actually believed they'd come. The ceremony was on a Saturday. 3 days before, Melissa announced she'd scheduled her piano recital for the same day. A recital she'd known about for months, but forgot to mention. When I reminded our parents about my award ceremony, my mother had looked at me with genuine confusion. "Sweetheart, you know we can't miss Melissa's recital. She's worked so hard. Your thing is just receiving an award. You've already won. But Melissa's performing. Can't you reschedule?" You can't reschedule a presidential ceremony. I'd gone alone. I'd stood on that stage, shaking hands with senators and tech CEOs, and I'd accepted my award with tears streaming down my face. Not from joy, but from the crushing weight of being unwanted by the people who were supposed to love me most. The photograph of me that appeared in Time magazine showed a girl with hollow eyes and a forced smile. One of the judges had pulled me aside afterward and asked if I was okay, if I had anyone to celebrate with. I'd lied and said my parents were waiting outside. I'd come home at midnight to a dark house. They hadn't even left the porch light on. The next morning, my mother had asked absently, "How was your thing?" before turning back to watching a video of Melissa's recital. My father hadn't even looked up from his newspaper. 3 months later, the headaches had started. By the time they took me seriously, by the time they stopped saying I was being dramatic, it was too late. But now I was 14 again, with 3 years of memories and knowledge, and I was going to rewrite everything. The first thing I did after waking up in my 14-year-old body was cry. I cried for the girl I'd been, for the daughter who'd tried so desperately to earn love that should have been freely given. I cried for the 3 years I'd have to live through again, knowing exactly how little I mattered to them. Then I stopped crying and started planning. I knew now what I hadn't known before. I was extraordinary. Not because my parents said so, they never had, but because I'd proven it. I'd created something remarkable, something that had caught the attention of the world's leading scientists and tech innovators. The only difference was that in my last life, I'd wasted so much energy trying to make my family care. I'd given them credit for my success, had included them in every interview, had thanked them publicly even as they forgot to attend my events. This time would be different. This time, I would build my success in secret. I would let them forget me, ignore me, overlook me, and then, when I'd achieved everything, when the world was watching, I'd let them realize exactly what they'd lost. I'd let them see, from the outside looking in, what they'd thrown away. But first, I had to survive the next 3 years in this house. That first day back, I went downstairs to find my family exactly as I remembered. My mother was making Melissa's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream. Melissa, 12 years old and already perfectly aware of her position as the golden child, was showing my parents a drawing she'd made. My father was praising it like she'd painted the Sistine Chapel. "Morning," I said quietly. My mother glanced up. "Oh, good, you're awake. Can you take out the trash before school? And you need to walk Melissa to her bus stop today. I have a hair appointment." No, good morning. No, how did you sleep? Just orders. Sure, I said, swallowing the familiar bitterness. In my last life, I would have argued, would have pointed out that Melissa was old enough to walk herself, would have complained that I'd missed my own bus. And my mother would have called me selfish and difficult. This time, I just nodded and took my bowl of plain oatmeal. I'd learned long ago not to expect chocolate chip pancakes to the table. "Mom," Melissa said, her voice syrupy sweet, "can you help me with my science project today after school?" "Of course, sweetheart. What time?" 3:30? My mother didn't even check her calendar. "Perfect. I'll be there." I had a robotics club meeting at 3:30, the first one of the semester, where they'd be choosing team leaders. I'd reminded my mother about it 3 times. But I remembered, that she wouldn't come. That when I got home, she'd be in Melissa's room, hot gluing cotton balls onto a poster board, having completely forgotten she'd promised to drive me. And I was right. At 3:20, I borrowed a phone from a friend and called home. My mother answered on the 5th ring, breathless and distracted. "Mom, my meeting's starting soon. Are you coming to get me?" Silence, then, "Oh, honey, I completely forgot. I'm helping Melissa with her project, and we're in the middle of, can you take the bus or walk?" It was a 40-minute walk. In my last life, I'd been so angry I'd cried on the entire walk home. This time, I just said, "Sure, Mom. See you at home." I heard the relief in her voice. "You're such a good sister. Thank you for understanding." I hung up, walked the 40 minutes, and went straight to my room. While the house echoed with praise for Melissa's amazing science project, the one my mother had basically done for her, I opened my laptop and began reconstructing my AI algorithm. I remembered most of it. The parts I didn't, I could figure out. I was, after all, the same genius I'd been before, just with the wisdom of experience. This was my secret now, my weapon, my future. And they would know nothing about it until it was too late. The pattern of my life resumed exactly as I remembered it. Melissa got the attention, the praise, the resources. I got the chores, the responsibilities, the expectation that I'd be mature and understanding when they forgot about me. My 14th birthday came and went with a grocery store cupcake, and a card signed by only my mother. My father had forgotten entirely. Melissa's 13th birthday, 2 months later, was a party with 30 friends, a professional photographer, and a cake that cost more than my parents spent on my entire birthday. When I made the honor roll, my mother stuck the certificate on the fridge without comment. When Melissa made the honor roll, they took her out to her favorite restaurant and posted about her achievement on social media with paragraphs about how proud they were, and I collected each slight like ammunition. I remembered every forgotten promise, every broken commitment, every time they chose her over me. Not because I wanted to wallow in it, but because I needed to remember why I was doing this. Why I couldn't let myself soften, couldn't let myself hope they'd change, because I knew they wouldn't. At night, while the house slept, I coded. I rebuilt my algorithm piece by piece, improving it with the knowledge I'd gained from my previous life. I knew which approaches worked and which were dead ends. I knew which competitions to enter and which to skip. I optimized, refined, perfected. I also started preparing for the future in other ways. I remembered the headaches that would come, the tumor they'd ignore. This time, I saved every penny I could and bought my own health insurance the moment I turned 16. I found doctors who'd see me without my parents' involvement, who'd take me seriously. When the headaches started, and they did, right on schedule in my junior year, I was ready. We caught the tumor early, a simple surgery, minimal recovery time. I told my parents it was a minor procedure for something unimportant. "That's good, honey," my mother had said absently, scrolling through photos of Melissa at a piano competition. "Glad you're okay." They never asked what the surgery was for. They never visited me at the hospital. I'd told them it wasn't necessary, knowing they'd take any excuse not to come. The nurses had looked at me with such pity when I sat alone in recovery, and I'd just smiled and told them my family was busy. I was alone, but I was alive. And I was winning. By the spring of my junior year, everything was in place. I'd rebuilt my algorithm, entered it in competitions, and was advancing through the ranks just as I had before. Regional champion, state champion, national qualifier. But this time, I didn't tell my parents about any of it. I went to competitions on weekends, telling them I was at the library or study groups. I won awards and brought them home late at night, hiding them in my closet. I did interviews with journalists and asked them not to publish my home address or parents' names. For privacy reasons, I said, but really because I didn't want my parents to find out. The National Youth Excellence Awards invitation arrived in March of my senior year, just as it had before. This time, I intercepted the mail and hid it. My parents never knew it existed. I had a plan now, refined and perfected. I knew exactly when my parents would be free, what Melissa's schedule was, how to orchestrate the perfect revenge. 2 months before the award ceremony, Melissa announced she wanted to have her senior piano recital on May 15th, her choice of date, her decision. My parents immediately marked it on the calendar, began planning, invited extended family. May 15th was also the date of the National Youth Excellence Awards. Perfect. I said nothing. I made no plans that conflicted. I was the perfect supportive sister, helping Melissa plan her recital, even offering to design her programs. My parents praised me for being so mature. 3 days before May 15th, I left an envelope on the kitchen counter, carefully placed where my mother would see it while making coffee. Inside was a formal invitation to the National Youth Excellence Awards ceremony addressed to the parents guardians of Sarah Chen. The invitation detailed that their daughter would be receiving the Presidential Award for Scientific Achievement, a full scholarship to MIT, and recognition as one of Time magazine's 30 under 18 to watch. The ceremony was in Washington, D.C. at 2 p.m. on May 15th. Melissa's recital was at our local community center at 3 p.m. on May 15th. I left the invitation there and went to school. When I came home that afternoon, the house was in chaos. "Sarah!" My mother grabbed me the moment I walked in and, "Sarah, what is this? Why didn't you tell us about this?" I looked at the invitation in her hand, at my father standing behind her with shock on his face, at Melissa lurking in the doorway looking worried. "Oh," I said calmly, "that. I didn't think you'd be interested. Didn't think we'd—" "Sarah, this is the Presidential Award. This is Time magazine. How could you not tell us?" I shrugged. "You've never cared about my academic stuff before. I didn't want to bother you." "Of course we care," my father said, and I could see he actually believed that. That's what made it all so much worse. They genuinely didn't realize how many times they'd chosen Melissa over me, how thoroughly they'd neglected me. In their minds, they were good parents, equal parents. The ceremony's in 3 days. My mother was reading the invitation again, her face pale. "Sarah, why did you wait so long to tell us?" "I left it where you'd find it," I said truthfully. "I figured you'd see it eventually." "We have to go," my father said. We have to be there. Our daughter is meeting the president. What about my recital? Melissa's voice was small, uncertain. The room went silent. I watched my parents look at each other, saw the calculation in their eyes. For once, for the first time in my entire life, they were actually weighing me against my sister and finding her wanting. Maybe we can do both, my mother said desperately. The ceremony's at 2, the recital's at 3. If we fly to DC in the morning, attend the ceremony, and fly back. Mom, I said quietly, it's okay. You don't have to come. What? Of course we're coming. No, really, Melissa's been planning her recital for months. You've already invited all her friends and family. You've rented the space. I'll be fine going alone. Sarah, we can't miss this, my father said, and I could hear the guilt creeping into his voice. This is a huge achievement. And Melissa's recital is important to her, I said. I understand that. You should stay here and support her. I'll take pictures for you. I watched them struggle. Watched them try to figure out how to be in 2 places at once. How to support both daughters when they'd spent 17 years teaching me that I always came second. We'll come to the ceremony, my mother finally said, her voice firm. Melissa, honey, we'll have to record your recital. Aunt Linda can be there and we can have a small celebration when we get back. Melissa's face crumpled. But Mom, all my friends are coming. You promised you'd be there. You promised. I know, sweetheart, but your sister... No, I interrupted. Both parents turned to stare at me. Don't come to the ceremony. Sarah, I mean it. You've already made plans for Melissa's recital. You've already committed. It's fine. I'm used to going to these things alone anyway. The words hung in the air, their truth undeniable. What do you mean used to? My father asked slowly. I've been competing for 3 years, I said. Regional competitions, state championships, national qualifiers. I've won dozens of awards. I've never had anyone there, and I've been fine. This is no different. My mother's face had gone white. You've been 3 years, Sarah? Why didn't you tell us? I did tell you, I said, and my voice was soft but clear. I told you about the first competition. You said it sounded nice, but you had to take Melissa to her piano lesson. I told you about the second one. You were at Melissa's art show. I told you about the third one and the fourth. And eventually I stopped telling you because it was easier than watching you forget. The silence was deafening. Sarah, my mother whispered, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We should have. It's okay, I said, and I meant it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beyond anger. Really, I understand. Melissa needed you more. She's younger. She needs more attention. I get it. And honestly, I prefer going alone now. It's less disappointing. I could see my words hitting them like physical blows. We're coming to the ceremony, my father said firmly. That's final. And I'm saying you're not, I replied just as firmly. I don't want you there. You don't... Sarah, this is the biggest moment of your life. Exactly. And I don't want it ruined by watching you check your phones the whole time, wondering how Melissa's doing, wishing you were at her recital instead. I don't want to stand on that stage and look for you in the audience and see you're not paying attention, or worse, that you left early to catch the end of her performance. I don't want to give a speech and know you're not listening. We would never. You always do, I said simply. Every parent-teacher conference, every award assembly, every single event I've ever had, you've been distracted by Melissa. Texting her, calling her, talking about her. And that's fine, that's your choice. But I don't want it at this ceremony. I don't want you to take this moment from me the way you've taken everything else. I turned and walked upstairs, leaving them standing in shocked silence. That night, I heard them arguing through my bedroom wall. My father angry, my mother crying, both of them trying to figure out how they'd failed so completely without even noticing. I heard Melissa crying too, probably guilty but also resentful that for once she wasn't the center of attention. I felt nothing. I'd cried all my tears in my first life. Now I was just executing a plan. The next morning, my mother came to my room. Sarah, I need you to listen to me, she said, sitting on my bed. Your father and I have discussed it, and we're both coming to the ceremony. We're going to be there for you. What about Melissa's recital? She'll reschedule. We'll have it next weekend instead. No, I said. My mother blinked. What? I said no. I don't want Melissa to reschedule. I don't want you to come. I want you to stay here and go to her recital exactly as planned. Sarah, please. Mom, do you remember my 15th birthday? She hesitated. Of course. What did we do to celebrate? Silence. My 16th birthday? More silence. The last school play I was in? The last award assembly you came to? The last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer? Tears were streaming down her face now. Sarah, I'm so sorry. We've been terrible parents to you. Let us make it right. Let us be there. You can't make it right, I said gently. Not in 3 days. Not with one ceremony. And I don't want you to try. I don't want you there out of guilt. I don't want you there because you suddenly realized you're supposed to care. I want to have this moment for myself, without the weight of your disappointment or your distraction or your guilt. We could never be disappointed in you, she whispered. But you have been, I said. Every time I wasn't Melissa. Every time I needed something that interfered with what she wanted. Every time I existed in a way that wasn't convenient for you. I know I was disappointing to you, and that's okay. I've made my peace with it. But I don't want you at my ceremony. She left crying. My father tried next that evening, then Melissa, sobbing and apologizing, then my mother again. I told them all the same thing. Stay home, go to the recital, I'll be fine. The day before I left for Washington, D.C., I found them in the living room, looking at old photo albums. I could see them realizing what I'd known all along, that there were hundreds of photos of Melissa and almost none of me. That in the family pictures, Melissa was always in the center, always in focus, while I was off to the side, blurry or cropped out entirely. Sarah, my mother said when she saw me, please let us come. The ceremony starts at 2 p.m., I said. It'll be broadcast live on C-SPAN. You can watch from home. And I left for the airport. The ceremony was magnificent. I stood backstage in a formal gown I'd bought with my own money, earned from freelance coding jobs and competition winnings. My hair was professionally done. I'd paid for that too. I looked elegant and poised and completely alone. The other award winners were there with their families. Proud parents, crying grandparents, excited siblings. They took group photos, hugged, laughed. I stood to the side, checking my phone for the 20th time. 3 missed calls from my mother, 5 texts from my father, a dozen messages from Melissa, all begging me to reconsider, to let them come, to please forgive them. I turned off my phone. The ceremony began. I watched from backstage as senators gave speeches, as scientists and entrepreneurs talked about the importance of youth innovation. I saw the audience, hundreds of people, cameras everywhere. The importance of the moment, impossible to miss. This was the moment I dreamed of in my last life. This was the validation I desperately wanted from my parents, the proof that I mattered, that I was worth their attention. But I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd earned this through my own brilliance, my own hard work. Their presence wouldn't make it more meaningful. In fact, their absence made it perfect. When they called my name, I walked onto that stage with my head high. I shook hands with the President of the United States. I accepted my award, a crystal sculpture and a plaque and a certificate for a full scholarship to MIT. I listened as they read my achievements, as they described my algorithm and its potential impact on disaster preparedness and climate science. And then they asked me to give a speech. I stepped up to the microphone, looked out at the audience, at the cameras broadcasting this moment to millions of people, including, I knew, my family, watching from our living room hundreds of miles away. Thank you, I began, my voice steady and clear. This award represents 3 years of work, hundreds of late nights, and countless moments where I wanted to give up but didn't. I learned to code on free online courses. I built my algorithm on a laptop I bought with money from tutoring other students. I entered competitions without telling anyone, won awards without celebrating, and worked toward this moment completely alone. I paused, letting that sink in. People ask me if it was hard, working without support. If it was lonely. And yes, it was. But it also taught me something valuable. That my worth isn't determined by whether people see me, or celebrate me, or remember my achievements. My worth is inherent. It exists whether anyone acknowledges it or not. I could feel the emotion building in my chest, but I kept my voice controlled. I want to thank everyone who made this possible. My teachers who encouraged me. my mentors who challenged me, my friends who believed in me. But most of all, I want to thank myself for not giving up, for not letting anyone else's blindness make me invisible, for believing I was worth the effort even when no one else did. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. To anyone out there who feels unseen, who feels forgotten, who feels like their achievements don't matter because no one's there to witness them, you're wrong. You matter. Your achievements matter. And someday, the people who overlooked you will realize what they lost. But by then, you'll be so far beyond needing their validation that their regret will mean nothing to you. I held up my award. This is for every overlooked daughter, every forgotten child, every person who had to be their own cheerleader. We don't need anyone else's approval. We never did. The applause was thunderous. I left the stage feeling lighter than I had in both lifetimes. Free, I stayed in Washington, D.C. for 3 more days. MIT had flown me out for a tour of their campus and meetings with potential advisors. Time magazine did a photo shoot and an extensive interview. Tech companies offered me internships. I met with senators about science education policy and was invited to speak at a conference on disaster preparedness. I did it all alone, and it was perfect. My phone stayed off the entire time. I knew what was happening at home, could picture it perfectly. My parents watching the ceremony, hearing my speech, realizing with devastating clarity exactly what they'd done. Realizing that I'd known all along, that I'd noticed every single time they'd chosen Melissa over me, and that I'd decided their regret wasn't worth delaying my success for even a single moment. I could picture them at Melissa's recital, distracted and guilty, their daughter's performance a hollow victory. I could picture them trying to call me, trying to apologize, trying to fix 17 years of damage with words that came far too late. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had over 100 missed calls and messages. I read through them while sitting in my hotel room, eating room service and watching the lights of DC sparkle outside my window. My mother, "Sarah, we watched your speech. We're so sorry. We're so sorry." My father, "Sweetheart, please call us. We need to talk. We need to apologize properly." Melissa, "Sarah, Mom and Dad are devastated. They can't stop crying. Please come home." Extended family members I hadn't heard from in years. "We saw you on TV. So proud of you. Your parents must be bursting with pride." Former classmates, "Holy shit. Sarah Chen on national TV. That's amazing." Teachers, "We always knew you'd do something extraordinary." I responded to the teachers and classmates. I thanked the extended family members and didn't correct their assumption that my parents were proud. I didn't respond to my parents or Melissa. Instead, I posted a photo on social media, me holding my award, standing in front of the Capitol building, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. The caption was simple: "Did it myself." The post went viral. Thousands of comments from people who related to my story, who'd felt overlooked by their own families, who saw themselves in my speech. The media picked it up. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the girl who achieved everything alone, who thanked herself in her acceptance speech, who chose her own success over her family's guilt. My parents saw it, of course. Everyone saw it, and that's when the real consequences began. I came home a week later to find my house transformed into a shrine to my achievement. My award was displayed prominently in the living room. Newspaper articles about me were framed on the walls. My photo from Time magazine was the new centerpiece of the mantle, replacing the collage of Melissa's piano competition ribbons. My parents looked like they hadn't slept in days. "Sarah!" My mother rushed to me the moment I walked in. "Sweetheart, welcome home. We're so proud of you. We've been telling everyone about your achievement." "Have you?" I said calmly, setting down my suitcase. "Yes, of course. We've been showing them videos of your speech, the articles about you. Everyone's so impressed." "That's nice." The cool politeness in my voice made her flinch. "Sarah, please, can we talk? Really talk." "About what?" "About everything. About how we failed you. About how sorry we are." I looked around at the hastily assembled celebration of my life. The life they'd ignored until it became public, until it became something they could brag about. "Where's Melissa?" I asked. "In her room," my father said quietly. "She's been upset. She feels guilty." "She shouldn't," I said. "She didn't do anything wrong. You did." The words were simple but devastating. "We know," my mother whispered. "We know we did. And we want to make it right." "You can't," I said. That's what you don't understand. You can't make this right. You can't give me back the 17 years where I was invisible to you. You can't give me back the birthdays you forgot, the ceremonies you missed, the awards you never celebrated. You can't give me back the feeling of being wanted by my own parents. We do want you, my father said desperately. We've always wanted you. No, I said firmly. You want the daughter who won a prestigious award. You want the daughter who was on TV, who's going to MIT, who might be famous someday. You want the version of me that looks good to other people. But you never wanted me when I was just Sarah, struggling and achieving in obscurity. You never wanted me when it mattered. My mother was crying. How do we fix this? You don't, I said. You live with it. You live with the knowledge that you had an extraordinary daughter and you treated her like she was ordinary. You live with the knowledge that when she needed you most, you were somewhere else. You live with the knowledge that she achieved something incredible, and she didn't want you there because your presence would have diminished it. Sarah, please. I'm going to MIT in 3 months, I continued. I'll come home for major holidays because we're family and that's what's expected. But don't expect more than that. Don't expect me to forgive you just because you're sorry now. Being sorry after you get caught isn't the same as being sorry enough to change. But we have changed, my father insisted. We see you now. You see my achievements, I corrected. That's not the same as seeing me. I walked upstairs, leaving them in their shrine to the daughter they'd finally noticed. Melissa was waiting in my room. Sarah, she said, standing up nervously. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know they were treating you like that. I didn't realize. Yes, you did, I said, not unkindly. Maybe not consciously, but you knew. You knew they gave you everything and gave me nothing. You knew they came to all your events and none of mine. You knew you were the favorite, and you liked it. She started crying. I did like it. I'm sorry. I was selfish and spoiled, and I never thought about what it meant for you. I'm sorry. I sighed, feeling suddenly tired. Melissa, you were a kid. Kids take what they're given and don't question it. I don't blame you for being the favorite. I blame them for having a favorite. Can you forgive me? Eventually, I said, but not right now. Right now, I need space. She nodded and left, and I finally had my room to myself. I looked around at my childhood space, the small room with the cheap furniture, so different from Melissa's large, renovated room down the hall. I'd spent so many nights in here working on my algorithm, dreaming of escape, dying slowly from a tumor no one took seriously enough to catch early. But I'd won. I'd survived. I'd achieved everything I set out to do, and I'd done it on my own terms. I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. There were dozens of new messages, internship offers, speaking engagements, interview requests. My life was exploding with opportunities, with people who wanted me, who valued what I could do. I didn't need my parents' pride anymore. I had the world's recognition. And that was more than enough. The summer before MIT was strange. My parents tried desperately to connect with me, to make up for lost time. They threw me a graduation party I didn't want. They bought me expensive gifts I didn't need. They posted constantly on social media about their brilliant daughter, sharing articles and interviews, basking in reflected glory. I let them. Not because I forgave them, but because I didn't care enough to stop them. The truth was, I'd achieved something in my revenge that I hadn't expected. Indifference. I'd thought I'd feel satisfaction watching them grovel, watching them realize what they'd lost. And I did, briefly. But mostly, I just felt nothing. They'd mattered so much in my last life, their approval had been everything. Now they were just people I lived with temporarily, people whose opinions had no weight. My mother noticed. Sarah, I feel like you're not really here, she said one day in July, finding me in the kitchen making lunch. You're physically here, but you're absent. I learned from the best, I said, not looking up from my sandwich. She flinched. That's fair, but Sarah, I want to know you. Really know you. Tell me about your algorithm. Tell me about your plans for MIT. Tell me about your life. I finally looked at her. Mom, you had 17 years to ask me those questions. You chose not to. You don't get to suddenly be interested now because it's convenient, or because you feel guilty. I'm interested because you're my daughter and I love you. No, I said gently. You love the idea of me. You love what I represent now. But you don't know me well enough to actually love me as a person. Then let me get to know you. Why should I asked, genuinely curious. What do I get out of that? You've proven that your love is conditional, that your attention goes to whoever's more convenient or more impressive at any given moment. Why would I invest in a relationship with people who've shown me so clearly that I don't matter to them? You do matter, she insisted, tears streaming down her face. You're my daughter. You'll always matter. Then where were you? I asked, my voice rising for the first time. Where were you when I was 14 and winning my first competition? Where were you when I was 15 and teaching myself advanced calculus because I couldn't afford a tutor? Where were you when I was 16 and going to doctors alone because I knew you'd say I was being dramatic? Where were you for any of it? She stopped because we both knew the answer. She was with Melissa. She was always with Melissa. I needed you to see me when I was invisible, I said, my voice returning to its calm tone. I needed you to care about me when I wasn't impressive yet, and you didn't. So now that I am impressive, now that I'm worthy of your attention in your eyes, I don't need you anymore. I've already learned to live without you. I took my sandwich and left her crying in the kitchen. Similar conversations happened with my father, with Melissa, with extended family members who suddenly wanted to be close to me now that I was someone. I gave them all the same message. Too little, too late. The only person I genuinely reconnected with was my grandmother, my father's mother, who lived 3 states away. She called me after seeing my speech. Sarah, she said, her voice warm and sad. I had no idea. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have paid more attention. I should have visited more. It's okay, Grandma, I said, and I meant it. You live far away. I know you didn't know. That's not an excuse. I should have made the effort. But Sarah, I want you to know. I'm proud of you. Not because of the award, but because you survived that house with your spirit intact. That takes strength. We talked for 2 hours. She told me stories about my father as a child, about how he'd always been easily influenced by his wife, how she'd worried about his priorities. She told me she'd set up a trust fund for me years ago, money my parents didn't know about because she'd worried I'd need resources they wouldn't provide. She was right. We made plans for me to visit her before MIT, to spend a week together, really getting to know each other. It was the one familial relationship I cared about maintaining. As for my parents and Melissa, I remained polite but distant, civil but cold. I existed in their house like a ghost, there but not really present, exactly as they'd made me feel for 17 years. Turnabout, as they say, is fair play. August came, and with it, moving day. MIT sent a whole care package, information about my dorm, my roommate, orientation schedule, scholarship details. My parents insisted on driving me to Boston, on helping me move in, on being part of this moment. I let them because fighting it seemed exhausting. The drive was quiet. My mother kept trying to start conversations that went nowhere. My father kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, his expression pained. Melissa sat next to me in the back seat, staring out the window, the guilt she felt taking up more space than her physical body. When we arrived at MIT, my parents tried to be helpful, carrying boxes, organizing my room, meeting my roommate, a brilliant girl from California who was kind enough to pretend not to notice the tension in my family. Finally, it was time for them to leave. We stood in the parking lot, my family clustered around me, none of us knowing what to say. Call us, my mother finally said, her voice breaking. Please call us. Let us know how you're doing. I will, I said, because it was easier than arguing. We love you, my father said. We're so proud of you. We know we don't deserve to be, but we are. Okay, I said. Melissa hugged me suddenly, fiercely. I'm going to be better, she whispered. I'm going to be the sister you deserved. Even if you never forgive me, I'm going to try. I hugged her back briefly. Good luck with that. They left, and I watched their car disappear down the road, carrying with it the weight of my childhood, my first life, my pain. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the late summer air, feeling the possibilities of my new life stretching out before me. Then I turned and walked back to my dorm, to my future, to the life I'd earned entirely on my own. MIT was everything I'd dreamed and more. My classes were challenging and engaging. My professors were brilliant. My research opportunities were incredible. I threw myself into my work, into expanding my algorithm, into new projects and collaborations. I made friends, real friends, who knew me, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could do for them. I dated someone briefly, a sweet engineering major, who thought I was incredible and told me so often. I joined clubs, attended events, lived the college experience I'd died before experiencing in my first life. I called my parents once a week, brief conversations where I told them superficial things. My classes were good, the weather was nice. Yes, I was eating enough. They tried to dig deeper, to connect, but I kept them at arm's length. They sent care packages I didn't need, filled with snacks and supplies and notes telling me they missed me, they loved me, they were sorry. I thanked them politely and donated most of it to the dorm's communal shelf. Melissa started texting me regularly, memes, updates about her life, attempts at sisterly bonding. I responded occasionally, usually with brief messages. She was trying, I'd give her that. But trying didn't erase the past. Thanksgiving came. I told my parents I was staying at school to work on a research project. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did work over Thanksgiving. But I also could have gone home. I chose not to. Christmas, I went to my grandmother's instead. We had a wonderful time, just the two of us, cooking together, watching old movies, talking about everything and nothing. She gave me a necklace that had belonged to her mother, and I cried for the first time in months. Good tears, grateful tears. "You're going to be okay," she told me, holding me. "You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be extraordinary." "I already am extraordinary," I said, smiling through my tears. "Yes," she agreed, "you are, and not because of your achievements, because of who you are." It was the validation I'd needed without knowing I needed it. When I returned to MIT in January, I felt settled in a way I hadn't before. I'd built a life that was entirely mine, filled with people who chose to be in it, who valued me, who showed up. And back at home, 3 states away, my parents were learning to live with the consequences of their choices. Spring of my freshman year, my algorithm made headlines again. I'd improved it, expanded its applications, and a major tech company wanted to buy the rights for an amount that would set me up for life. I accepted the offer. At 19, I became a millionaire. The media went crazy. Here was the girl who'd done everything alone, who'd thanked herself in her award speech, who'd now secured her financial future before most people graduated college. Articles about me focused on my independence, my self-sufficiency, my refusal to rely on family support. I gave interviews where I talked about believing in yourself even when no one else does. I became a symbol for neglected children everywhere, for anyone who'd ever felt invisible in their own family. My parents saw all of it, of course. They called, desperate to congratulate me, to be part of my success. "Sarah, this is amazing," my mother gushed. "We're so proud. Your father and I were thinking maybe we could come visit, take you out to celebrate?" "No, thank you," I said politely. "I'm celebrating with friends here." "Oh, of course, but we'd love to be included." "I'll send pictures," I said, and ended the call. I didn't send pictures. Instead, I posted them on social media, me and my friends at a fancy restaurant, toasting my success, laughing and happy. Me and my roommate buying ridiculous things we didn't need just because we could. Me donating a significant amount to a charity that supported underprivileged students in STEM. My parents commented on every post, trying desperately to be part of the narrative. I never responded to their comments. It was a special kind of torture, I realized. They could see my life, see my happiness, see my success, but they couldn't be part of it. They were spectators to the life of the daughter they'd ignored, watching from the outside as she thrived without them, exactly as I'd planned. Sophomore year, I was recruited by a major tech company for an internship that would have me working on disaster prediction systems for the UN. It was an incredible opportunity, a chance to see my algorithm used to save lives globally. I accepted immediately. The internship was in Geneva. I'd be gone all summer. I informed my parents via email. My mother called, crying. "Sarah, that's wonderful, but you won't be home at all this summer?" "No," I said. "I'll be in Switzerland." "But we were hoping. We wanted to spend time with you, make up for lost time." I have work to do, I said simply. Important work. More important than family? The question hung in the air, loaded with irony. Yes, I said finally, because my family taught me that work is more important than family. You taught me that when you chose Melissa's activities over my needs, over and over, for 17 years. You taught me that other things matter more than showing up for people you love. So, yes, my work is more important than spending time with people who've proven I'm not a priority to them. Silence. Sarah, that's not fair, my father said. I hadn't realized he was on the line, too. We're trying to change. We're trying to be better. I know you are, I said. But I don't owe you the opportunity to try. I don't owe you my time, my presence, or my forgiveness. You're my parents, and I love you in the abstract way you love someone because you're supposed to. But I don't like you, and I don't want to spend my valuable time and energy on people I don't like just because we share DNA. We're your parents, my mother whispered. Biologically, yes. But you haven't parented me in any meaningful way since I was a child. You were guardians who provided food and shelter. That's the legal minimum, not a relationship worth maintaining. I hung up before they could respond. The summer in Geneva was transformative. I worked with brilliant scientists from around the world. My algorithm was integrated into early warning systems in vulnerable countries. I saw firsthand how my work was making a difference, how it could save thousands of lives. I posted photos from Switzerland, the Alps, UN headquarters, meetings with world leaders, the joy of doing meaningful work. My parents commented on every post, desperate little messages trying to stay connected to a daughter who'd moved beyond them. I never responded. Melissa, now in her senior year of high school, sent me a long email. She told me she'd stopped playing piano, that she'd realized she never actually enjoyed it, that she'd only done it because it was how she got attention from our parents. She said she was seeing a therapist, working through her guilt and her own relationship with our parents. She said she understood if I never wanted a real relationship with her, but she wanted me to know she was trying to be better. I wrote back, a brief message telling her I was glad she was in therapy, that I hoped she found what made her happy. I didn't promise anything, but I also didn't close the door entirely. Growth, I suppose. Or maybe just exhaustion with the weight of holding grudges. Junior year, everything changed. I was in my dorm room studying when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Sarah Chen?" a professional voice asked. "Yes." "This is Dr. Rodriguez from Boston Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about your mother, Karen Chen. She's been in a car accident." My heart stopped. "Is she—" "She's alive, but in critical condition. You're listed as her emergency contact. Can you come to the hospital?" I was moving before I'd consciously decided to move, grabbing my keys, my wallet, running to my car. The drive to the hospital was a blur. I kept thinking about my last conversation with my mother, the cruel things I'd said, the distance I'd maintained. I kept thinking about how I'd spent 3 years punishing her, and now she might die without me ever forgiving her. When I got to the hospital, my father and Melissa were already there, both looking destroyed. "Sarah," my father grabbed me the moment he saw me. "Thank God, she's in surgery. The doctors say it's bad." We waited. Hours of waiting, of pacing, of terrible hospital coffee and fluorescent lights and the special kind of hell that is hoping someone you love survives. Someone I loved. Because despite everything, despite the neglect and the pain and the years of feeling invisible, I did love her. She was my mother. And the thought of losing her, of never having the chance to what? Forgive her? Reconcile? I didn't know, I just knew I wasn't ready for her to be gone. Finally, a surgeon came out. "She made it through surgery," she said, and we all exhaled. "But the next 72 hours are critical. She has a traumatic brain injury. We won't know the full extent of the damage until she wakes up. If she wakes up. If." We took turns sitting with her in the ICU. My father refused to leave her side. Melissa and I rotated shifts, keeping him company, bringing food he wouldn't eat. On the second day, sitting in that sterile room watching my mother breathe through a ventilator, I finally broke. "I'm sorry," I whispered, holding her hand. "I'm sorry for being so cold. I'm sorry for making you suffer. I wanted you to hurt the way you hurt me. And you did. And I thought that would feel good, but it doesn't. It just hurts more. My father heard me. He was sitting on the other side of the bed, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Sarah, he said quietly, you have nothing to apologize for. We hurt you first. We hurt you for years. You were just protecting yourself. But I went too far, I said, tears streaming down my face. I made it impossible for you to make amends. I punished you over and over for something you couldn't change. We deserved it, he said simply. Every bit of it. And Sarah, if she doesn't wake up, if I lose her, his voice broke. At least I know our last years together, we were trying. We were better. We weren't great parents to you, but we became better people because of what you taught us. What did I teach you? That people can live without you if you don't show them they matter. That love isn't enough if you don't show up. That you can lose someone, even while they're still alive, if you take them for granted. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the weight of his regret, his growth, his love. Dad, your mother loves you, he interrupted. She never stopped. She just didn't know how to show it in a way you needed. And by the time she learned, you'd already learned to live without it. We sat in silence on either side of my unconscious mother, both of us hoping for a miracle. On the third day, she woke up. Her recovery was slow. The brain injury left her with some memory issues, mild aphasia, and a long road of rehabilitation ahead. But she was alive. She was going to be okay. I stayed in Boston, taking the semester off to help with her care. MIT was understanding. My professors arranged for me to complete coursework remotely to make up labs later. Being home again was surreal. I took care of my mother the way she'd never taken care of me, patiently, attentively, always present. I drove her to therapy appointments, helped her with exercises, sat with her when she got frustrated with her slow progress. My father watched us with something like wonder, like he couldn't believe I was capable of such care after how I'd been treated. Melissa came home from college every weekend to help. We developed a rhythm, a system, a tentative new dynamic. One day, about 6 weeks into recovery, my mother grabbed my hand during one of her speech therapy sessions. Sarah, she said slowly, carefully forming each word, why are you here? You're my mother, I said simply. You needed help. But I don't deserve. She struggled with the words, tears forming. Probably not, I agreed. But I'm not here because you deserve it. I'm here because I deserve to be the kind of person who shows up for family, even when family didn't show up for me. I'm here because I'm breaking the cycle. She cried then, and I held her, and something shifted between us. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It wasn't absolution. It was just acknowledgement of the past, of the pain, of the possibility of something different moving forward. My mother's accident changed things in ways I hadn't expected. It taught me that revenge, while satisfying, isn't actually fulfilling. That punishing people who hurt you doesn't heal your wounds. It just creates new ones. That being right isn't the same as being happy. But it also taught me that I didn't have to choose between protecting myself and being compassionate, that I could acknowledge the harm they'd done while also acknowledging their growth, that I could maintain boundaries while still showing up when it mattered. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt our relationship, my parents and I. Not the relationship we should have had from the start, but something new, something honest. They went to therapy, we all did, family therapy, individual therapy. We talked about the neglect, the favoritism, the damage. We talked about how to move forward. My father admitted he'd been a passive parent, letting my mother make all the decisions, not realizing how unbalanced things had become. My mother admitted she'd found Melissa easier to relate to, that I'd always been so independent, she'd convinced herself I didn't need her. They both admitted they'd failed me in fundamental ways, and that no amount of apologizing could undo that. But they were trying now, really trying. Melissa and I talked too, long conversations about growing up in the same house, but having completely different experiences. She told me about the pressure of being the favorite, how she'd always known she'd never achieve anything as impressive as I had, how she'd felt like she was living in my shadow even while our parents doted on her. You were always the gifted one, she said. I was just the loved one, and neither of us should have had to choose. She was right. We became, if not close, at least honest with each other. We built a relationship based on who we actually were, rather than our childhood roles. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, arguments, moments where old patterns resurfaced. But we worked through them. And through it all, I stayed at MIT. I completed my degree, I continued my research. I built the life I'd always wanted, a life where I was valued, where I was seen, where I mattered. The difference was now my family could be part of that life, at least peripherally. They attended my graduation, all of them, cheering loudly, crying with pride. They visited me in Boston and actually engaged with my life. They asked about my research and listened to the answers. They showed up. It was 3 years too late and 17 years overdue. But it was something. The full circle moment came in my senior year. I was invited to speak at a conference on disaster preparedness. My algorithm had been successfully implemented in 5 countries and had helped evacuate populations ahead of 3 major storms, saving an estimated 10,000 lives. It was a huge deal. International recognition, media coverage, world leaders in attendance. I sent the information to my parents with a simple message. I'm speaking on March 15th. You're welcome to come. I didn't demand they come. I didn't manipulate or guilt trip. I just extended an invitation and let them choose. They chose to come. All 3 of them, my mother, my father, and Melissa, flew to New York for the conference. They sat in the front row. They listened to every word of my speech about how technology can save lives, about the importance of preparation, about turning personal pain into global impact. When I finished, they stood and applauded louder than anyone. Afterward, at the reception, my mother hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you are. You're kind and brilliant and strong, and I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. My father pulled me aside later. "Sarah, I know we can never make up for the years we lost, but I want you to know, watching you tonight, seeing how you've changed the world, how you've survived and thrived despite us, you're the best thing I've ever been part of creating, and I'm sorry I forgot that for so long." Melissa was last. "You know what I realized watching you up there?" she said. "You didn't just survive our family, you transcended it. You became something so much bigger than the pain they caused you. And I want to be like that too. Not a scientist or whatever. I'm studying education now, by the way, but someone who takes their damage and transforms it into something good." "You can be," I told her. "You already are." We went to dinner after, all 4 of us, actually talking, actually present with each other. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, old tensions that surfaced, but it was real. And when I went back to Boston that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because they'd finally become the parents I needed, not because they'd erased the past or made up for their mistakes, but because I'd proven to myself that I could survive without them, and then chosen to let them in anyway, not out of need, but out of choice. That was the real victory, not the revenge, not the punishment, not even the achievement. The victory was becoming someone who was whole enough to forgive without forgetting, who was strong enough to be vulnerable, who was independent enough to choose connection. I'd been reborn once with the gift of foreknowledge. I'd been reborn again with the gift of wisdom, and this time I was going to live a life worth celebrating, not for them, but for me. The story came full circle, but I'd transcended the circle entirely. I was beyond revenge now, beyond pain, beyond the need to prove anything. I was just Sarah Chen, MIT graduate, life-saving scientist, beloved granddaughter, work-in-progress daughter, and most importantly, enough. Always enough. Exactly as I'd always been.